Tough loss for the San Francisco 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 11, and they came out a little bit more injured and maybe a little bit angry after that 20-17 loss. Quotes from Kyle Shanahan, and what's the latest with quarterback Brock Purdy's shoulder? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers and appreciate all the new listeners jumping on with us on this ride daily throughout the football season on Locked On 49ers. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return right now on FanDuel because new customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So just what the 49ers needed, Croc, is an injured quarterback now. And it turns out, according to Kyle Shanahan's conference call on Monday, that Brock Purdy has some shoulder soreness. He emerged from Sunday's loss with some soreness to his shoulders or his throwing shoulder, his right shoulder. He's considered day-to-day right now. So I don't, shoulder soreness isn't the most serious. You'd probably rather not have your quarterback's throwing shoulder be sore. If there's shoulders on the team that you don't want to be sore, that's probably the number one shoulder you don't want to be sore. But day-to-day doesn't sound like it's too serious, but nonetheless, an injury that Kyle Shanahan doesn't think really affected him too much on Sunday. Something to monitor for sure.
Yeah, definitely something to monitor. And like you said, just an injury that you're not looking forward to, especially not right now. The 49ers need to get on a nice little hot streak. And if they're going to do that, it's probably going to be because of not just the legs of Brock Purdy, but the arm, that shoulder. They're going to need him healthy, that's for sure.
No doubt. Not the only injury. I want to go over some of the injury report from Kyle Shanahan, but just Kyle's overall thought. And actually, we got Kurt Benkert, who is the former NFL quarterback, former backup journeyman type. He was with the 49ers. In fact, I think his last stop was on the 49ers. And he's worked with Kyle Shanahan and knows a little bit about the Kyle Shanahan offense. And he's got some thoughts with the whole debate about audibles and protections and all those things. So I want to quote his tweets on the subject a little bit later, but I want to quote Kyle Shanahan first. And this was Kyle Shanahan's thoughts and feelings after the loss to the Seahawks. He said, quote, "We were pissed off from yesterday. We had every chance to win it and we didn't get it done. We understand our expectations. I think guys are pissed and ready to put that game behind us." And so I think 49ers fans might take some comfort that Kyle feels about that loss, probably very similar to how the 49ers fans feel about that loss. And so I guess it starts with Croc. Okay, you're pissed about it, but how do you fix it? Because it's not like this is a new development. And I want to throw one more stat in here about a game that you think you are going to win, have every chance to win it, and don't end up winning it. I want to go to Josh Dubow of the Associated Press. The 49ers have had 9 drives this season that started in the fourth quarter with them leading by 8 points or fewer. So leading by 8 points or fewer. They scored on 2 of those 9 drives, 2 touchdowns at Seattle in week 6. The other 7 ended with no points, including 1 each in the Rams loss, the Cardinals loss, and the Seahawks loss. So the 49ers felt good, flying high, right? Thursday night, you go to Seattle. They score in the fourth quarter with the lead and end up slamming the door on the Seahawks and win those games. Those other 7 drives in those other games where they had the lead, they couldn't score. They could not slam the door and put away their opponents. And it ended in 3 divisional losses where you're up by 8 points or fewer in those games, in each of them.
Who do you put that on? Do you just go straight to the head man, the offensive coordinator, the play caller, the head coach, Kyle Shanahan?
I think you have to. And Kyle's taking a lot of heat this week. And it goes back to his quote. Okay, you're pissed about it. We understand our expectations. I think our guys are pissed and ready to put that game behind us. Well, putting it behind you is not quite enough because you put one behind you. The second one, you can almost say you put it behind you. You can't putting them behind you. You got to put it in front of you and figure out why you're not able to close out these games. And so I do put it on Kyle to figure that out.
That has to do with execution, right? And even some of the things that may be out of Kyle Shanahan or even Brock Purdy's control. There was a drop earlier in the season by Ronnie Bell. I'm pretty sure that's one of the drives that they're talking about, where 49ers have an opportunity to get some points on the board or maybe even just put a game away, and you come up empty-handed because of a drop from Ronnie Bell, and all of a sudden you lose that game. It's been kind of tough to watch the 49ers down the stretch because you almost feel that like the implosion happening. And I definitely felt the last game. You felt it in some of the other games, even a game where the team didn't quite come back, right? Like they were able to put away the Seattle Seahawks the last time those two teams played. But this time, I don't know. I continue to have probably less and less faith in the 49ers ability to close this out. And some of it is just maybe it's just not this isn't quite the team that you were expecting the 49ers to have on the field. They've had a lot of injuries. I think it's kind of even the playing field in some of these situations. And now all of a sudden you're finding the 49ers at 5-5. And I don't think any of us expected that.
It's hard for me to put it on the injuries, Croc. And I'll tell you why. It's because they haven't had so many injuries that you look at the 49ers on paper and you're like, oh my gosh, they're in trouble in this game because they don't have everybody, right? It's like, okay, you don't have Ayuk. Well, you got a rookie first-round pick, and you've got your best receiver this year in Juwan Jennings still, and you got Debo, right? And you don't have George Kittle. Well, you still got Debo. You got Christian McCaffrey back now. And the 49ers are running the ball worse with Christian McCaffrey than they did with Jordan Mason before that, And I think closing it out with the run game is a big part of it, right? Remember when Christian McCaffrey called Jordan Mason Mariano Rivera because he was the closer, right? And we're like, oh man, the Niners are going to go pound the ball at the end of games with Jordan Mason after they give him the look of Christian McCaffrey all game long. Never really happened last year like that because it was just so Christian McCaffrey centric, and he was always out there, and there's no reason to take him off the field unless he's hurt. And it's kind of just jumped right back into that. It's just not been as successful. And I think a big part of it was everyone was hoping, I think Kyle Shanahan probably included, okay, get Christian McCaffrey back. That's going to fix a lot. That's going to band-aid a lot of the things that have been weird for us, red zone, whatever, closing out games. That hasn't happened. And so I don't know if we should expect McCaffrey to continue to get better and better, a little bit stronger, a little bit closer to 100% because it doesn't look like he's quite 100% back there. Or should we not expect that? Or should we have never expected that one player to come in and fix everything that's going on with the 49ers? But there hasn't been so many injuries that they don't have all of these players. They still have plenty of talent, plenty of weapons every single week. And it still hasn't been enough. And so that's why I can't put it on injuries, even though they've had more injuries this year than they have had last year.
So then there's a coaching issue. And then now that 100% falls on the shoulders of not just Kyle Shanahan, but Nick Sorensen, the special teams coordinator as well. I think all coordinators have kind of had a hand in this. But when you look at the defensive coordinator and they gave up that drive, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I feel like a defense that through most of this game had only given up 13 points. I'm not going to put the L on them. I'm going to put it square on the shoulders of the offense, and the offense that had, like we just discussed, opportunities to put this game away in this game with certain drives, and they just haven't been able to do it. So, Kyle Shanahan, he's going to shoulder blame. He probably feels as frustrated as anyone. Do you tie Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy in with each other? There was some off-target throws, and a lot of people complaining about this Deebo Samuel route yesterday. They were like, "Oh, look at this lazy route from Deebo," and I'm looking at it's not a lazy route. That's a speed cut. So route running. I think everybody thinks with route running, it's supposed to be, okay, you close the space on the guy, you get on his toes, you hit him with a left, right, you go one way, that guy goes way the other way. And it's like, yeah, you have those at times, but there's other times that, especially when you're talking about just kind of timing routes where the receiver has to get out of the cut in a speed cut. So a speed cut is more rounded. All right, it's kind of just round into it, and you want the ball to be on the receiver. And that's not quite how it worked out. There are some things that a receiver and a speed cut can do to help. And I think Deebo Samuel has been at fault with this in the past. But sometimes when he is running his speed cut, which to a lot of fans looks like this rounded, lazy route, but he doesn't quite explode out. And sometimes he kind of drifts upfield a little bit, when you need that guy out of that speed cut, sometimes you need to kind of work back downhill just a little bit, and it creates a natural separation from the receiver and the cornerback. So I think he can help himself with that. But that throw that Brock Purdy threw, and this is one of the last drives, I mean, it was high, behind. I mean, it was a terrible throw regardless. So I think the quarterback in these moments, you got to figure out how to make a play. We saw Brock Purdy do this several times late in the postseason last year against the Green Bay Packers, get a drive going to win the game. I don't care about what happened early on. It wasn't a great game, whatever. But when you needed to make the plays to put the team away, you did that. Same thing with the Detroit Lions. There were opportunities in that game for him to, hey, I got to make some plays. He did it. So far this season, that has been something that has been very, very inconsistent with the offense.
Yeah, a definite miss. That was a heartbreaking miss from Brock Purdy on that play. And I'm definitely not putting that one on Deebo Samuel. I will say from the end zone angle, though, you can kind of see where there's a defender, got his arm up in the air. I think Purdy kind of had to drift or throw around the arm, maybe over the arm is maybe why the throw was off. It wasn't just a complete like, okay, this guy's wide open and I completely missed the throw. So, that happens in the NFL. You got to make the play, right? And if Deebo Samuel catches the ball, he's got to make a play. Go score. You know what I mean? Like, go make a play. We haven't seen a lot of those plays from Deebo Samuel. So execution's a big part of it. Absolutely. And it just seems to be like nobody's stepping up and making the big play, whether it's a big catch or a big throw or a big run, or a big play on defense, sealing the game. So it's definitely a group effort, but I think it all starts with, it has to start at the top with Kyle Shanahan. You got to get that figured out. More on Kyle Shanahan and his offense a little bit later, and we'll hear Kurt Benkert, former NFL quarterback's comments about what it's like to run Kyle Shanahan's offense and how he views it with all of these conversations about audibles and checks at the line of scrimmage and protections and those types of things. And more from the injury report following Monday's conversation with Kyle Shanahan next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Pre-Alcohol by Z-Biotics. Pre-Alcohol probiotic drink by Z-Biotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. And every time I've had Pre-Alcohol by Z-Biotics before drinks, I notice a huge difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on my podcast and everything I got to do the next morning without worry. Step one, you drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Then you pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night's sleep after your night, and enjoy tomorrow. It is that easy. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On NFL at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. The next segment of this episode is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Live in-game betting, so much fun, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, tons of weekly and every game lines in every sport, tons of props. You talk draft, talk coaches, talking next coach to get fired, talking coach of the year. All of it you can find at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Croc. A little good news on the injury front here before we move on to some more of the bad news from the latest injury report following the 49ers loss to the Seahawks. And Charvarius Ward is going to be back soon and, in fact, has been around the team and was at the game Sunday, even though he wasn't playing. And so Charvarius Ward is back with the team. He's joining the team meeting on Monday evening, and then was present at the game. And so he's back with the team, and it's looking like he's on track to be able to play again with the San Francisco 49ers here in week 12, which is a big stretch for the 49ers upcoming. You do have to put that behind you. Kyle Shanahan's right about that with what's going on with the 49ers and their upcoming opponents, because they can't dwell on the past because there's even tougher opponents than the Seahawks coming up. They got to start winning some of these games real soon, Croc, or else we're going to have to put this season to bed. And so Charvarius Ward might be on the field for the 49ers in week 12. And Dre Greenlaw, he's getting closer. We keep hearing about him being close. And Kyle Shanahan said he hopes to have Dre Greenlaw back at practice next week. John Lynch said the Greenlaw will need to get a few practices in for a few weeks before he plays in the game. So still a few weeks off. If he starts practicing, needs a couple of weeks of practice, that puts us at week 13, 14, something like that before I think anybody should expect to see Dre Greenlaw on the field for the 49ers. But getting closer, inching closer is Dre Greenlaw to a return to practice.
A couple of nuggets on their replacements. And with Charvarius Ward, you had Isaac Yiadom out there, and he had a nice interception early in the game, overthrow by Geno Smith. And he set the 49ers up in scoring position. They only got 3 points out of that, right? Like, those are the things when we look at the outcome of this game. You get an interception, it sets you up with a short field. You got to capitalize and punch in it for a touchdown. The 49ers did not do that. And Devondre Campbell, he's in right now in place of Dre Greenlaw. And on the last drive, I was wondering, did the 49ers try to spy Geno Smith? He was taking off. He was utilizing his legs. Everybody's like, no, he got slow. Oh, man, Devondre Campbell in there. And I'm like, well, when the Chiefs, 49ers, when the Seahawks are in an obvious passing situation, why do you have Devondre Campbell in the game? Get him out of there. Go dime. Get another defensive back in there and potentially spy a Geno Smith who's been taken off on you. Those are the type of adjustments you start to wonder. Nick Sorensen, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on some of this, and the defense did play well, but decisions like that, you got to figure out a way to keep the Seahawks out of the end zone. And the best way to do it right there, they're not going to run the ball. Spy Geno Smith. Put somebody else in there. Put D Winners in. Hey, D Winners, your only responsibility is to key Geno Smith. He starts to move, you chase him down. I think he could have did a great job at that.
Yeah, and on that play, Devondre Campbell carries the receiver who's crossing the middle of the field. So either he screwed that up and he's supposed to go back to the hook zone where he was at and keep his eyes on Geno Smith, or it was the other linebacker, which in this case would be Fred Warner, that wasn't able to get over, and Geno Smith is supposed to be his guy because and there's been some confusion and some arguing about what the responsibilities might have been on that play for the linebackers. Was it cover 4? Did they convert to man, with what the route combination was and how they played that coverage? So it's one of the linebackers. Yeah, got to have a linebacker on looking at Geno Smith and don't allow him to just waltz into the end zone.
But if you don't spy them, like if you don't tell them, like, hey, we're spying them, then guys are going to play their zones how do you traditionally play them, which is, okay, let me wall this guy off, drift upfield with this. And in the midst of all that, you got pass rushers that kind of get outside their rush lanes, and it makes it to where a quarterback can take off and run. Like, I don't put that on their linebackers once he takes off. If neither one of those guys were a designated spy. Yeah. And typically, if you have a zone coverage and you don't designate a backer as a spy, then the quarterback's definitely going to have the ability to just take off. I mean, it just is what it is. That's why teams don't like to run. If you're playing against a quarterback that is even more willing, like let's say Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson will take off. So you're probably going to see teams not play a whole lot of man coverage in key situations. Why? Man coverage, everybody's backs turned to the quarterback. They're running with the receivers and whatnot, and it just allows a quarterback to take off scotch-free. In zone, there are more eyes on them, but when you're in a short area like that, a guy is still bound to be able to find the crease and take off if there's no one designated to spy him.
A classic Kyle Shanahan answer when he was asked about Nick Bosa's injury. Nick Bosa dealing with a hip injury. He left the game, looked like he was in a lot of pain, and did not return. And Kyle said, quote, there's just as good of a chance of him to play or not to play next week. So no idea. And we'll see what happens. And so Bosa's going to be monitored, probably not to practice much at all, if at all, this week. And we'll see what happens with Nick Bosa. And I think probably you should not expect him to be out there. Well, I guess I take that back. You should expect him to be just as likely to play as to not play. So that's the report on Nick Bosa and his hip, which is a bummer. And the 49 or the Seahawks yards per play doubled when Nick Bosa was out of the game last week. Like, Nick Bosa is really important because the 49ers defensive line already isn't as dominating as they have been in years past. And you take the best player out of it, and it's going to be a big task, even though they got Yetur Gross-Matos back and he made some plays last week. And Leonard Floyd's been fine. I think he had 1.5 sacks last week. You're going to miss Nick Bosa.
need Nick Bosa out there. That's for sure, because he doesn't just affect the game in passing and rushing the passer, but also in the run game. And Kenneth Walker didn't have a big game on the ground. He's averaging like 3 yards per carry. Nick Bosa and the attention that he garners, I mean, that has a big part in that.
By the way, quick note on Christian McCaffrey. This from Matt Barrows. Christian McCaffrey played 59 snaps Sunday, and the number of times that Christian McCaffrey has played 59 or more snaps in the regular season last year was one time. He played 70 snaps in the Week 16 loss to the Ravens last year. That was Christmas. So that's the last time he's played that mess. He comes back and he's just playing almost every snap still. He's played so many snaps coming off of this Achilles. And they gave him the ball, like half the time, like half of the plays were for Christian McCaffrey last week too. And the offense wasn't a juggernaut there. So Mason looked good. Do you ease off of McCaffrey? I think you have to ease off McCaffrey, right? Because his rushing efficiency is literally worse than Mason's had been this year. And you got to use McCaffrey, but I don't think you can design the whole offense out of Christian McCaffrey right now.
Peacock, do you know what the definition of insanity is?
That's when you do something over and over and expect different results.
Yeah. So why should we expect anything different from Kyle Shanahan?
But does that mean he's insane because he's going to keep doing the same thing over and over again? So we're insane and he's insane at the same time.
We're both insane, and it's funny because I saw Dre Mason in the game. He was in the game early. I'm like, oh, okay, they're gonna use multiple backs. Let's go. He had a nice carry,
and
then he's like, all right, that's enough. 2 carries for you.
All right. What does a former quarterback say about Kyle Shanahan's offense next? The final segment of today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Built Rewards. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on dream vacations, or put points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. So pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbuilt, joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. A couple more quick injury notes. Good news on George Kittle. He should practice Wednesday after missing the game. Said he was close, but wasn't quite able to play on Sunday. Trent Williams has a sore ankle. Shanahan said he appreciated him battling through it in Sunday's game. And so we'll see if Trent Williams can continue to battle through his sore ankle. That's one thing that's going to be tough for him to get better at. So don't be surprised when Trent Williams doesn't practice all week and then gets a limited practice Friday and then plays on Sunday. And hopefully George Kittle's able to do the same thing. So Kittle, Trent Williams and Bosa are really the ones to watch. I'm guessing that Purdy's arm is going to feel better later in the week. If not, then it might be big trouble for the Niners.
Definitely need Kittle back, or there might be big trouble for the Niners as well. I mean, just kind of missing him in the run blocking game. Obviously, his explosive ability, I've been lobbying for him to just get more targets, because the more targets he gets, the more opportunities he has to really create those mismatches and have some explosive plays. So 49ers need George Kittle back.
I want to go to Kurt Benkert, former NFL quarterback, and he has chimed in on the thing that a lot of people are bringing up about Kyle Shanahan, his offense, and what is an audible and what should be expected of the 49ers offense and what they actually go through. And he's, had a playbook in his hand. He's been in team meetings, and he didn't play any regular season games for the 49ers. I'm not sure if he even got in the preseason game. I can't remember. He was a mid-season addition, I think, right? Like practice squad. And then, but he's practiced with the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan. He says the 49ers offense doesn't adjust projections. They just throw hot. And this is something that if you watch any of the QB school with JT O'Sullivan, he talks about this a lot. It's a frustration for him as well with Kyle Shanahan's offense, and puts the quarterback Brock Purdy in some really tough situations throwing hot. in some of these cases. Kurt goes on to say, other teams know this and can force their hand in critical situations, just like we saw in the Super Bowl last year. It's mind-blowing stuff that a simple flipper would fix. And a flipper is sort of like a call where you flip the protections. And to put it simply, and it's kind of something I've talked about recently, Croc, and something I talked about after the Super Bowls. I think these good defensive coordinators that Kyle Shanahan has a lot of trouble with consistently do a really good job of using Kyle Shanahan's rules against him. And that's pretty much what Kurt Benkert is saying right here. He goes on to say a lot more. He says, there's a happy medium, in my opinion. Some plays do not need a protection change, and it makes sense to go fast and just throw hot. While on critical downs, you should only be calling the best play possible, and there should be a few tools for every quarterback to get the edges protected the right way. This is what Jordan Love does so well on third downs, who the 49ers are going to see very soon, especially in the red zone. During my time in San Francisco, he says, this was the number one thing that made no sense to me. If there is a clear and easy answer, why not empower your quarterback to get you into the best protection? This stems back to Shanahan's history as a receiver, in my opinion, instead of seeing it through the eyes of a quarterback. But what do I know? I'm just a YouTuber. Okay, so that's Kurt Benkert. So,
is that what he says? He also was with Green Bay as well.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, in fact, his picture, his avatar is of him in a Green Bay Packers uniform from the official press guide. So that's what Kurt Benkert, journeyman quarterback. Some people's going to say, oh, he's trash, and he's got. In fact, a lot of people like to bring up he's got like negative rushing yards because all he's done is kneel down, and so he has less rushing yards than you or I do in the NFL. But he actually took a snap to kneel that down, right, Kurt Benkert. But here's the thing: he's
a good quarterback at Virginia. I watched him in college.
He can sling it a little bit. I saw him doing one of these. I think it must have been at the Super Bowl where they have like the skills competition stuff for fans to do, or maybe it's for the quarterbacks to do. I can't remember, but I saw him doing it, and he was ridiculous. There's like trick shot artists. Like he was hitting every throw. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see a guy who's even like can't hack it in the NFL and how good they are. It's like when you play with a great golfer and you're a hacker, you're like, oh my God, this is like, I'm on a different planet. And this guy's only a scratch golfer. He's not even a PGA Tour player. And it's just like, we're not playing the same sport. So it's crazy how talented some of these guys are that can't even make it in the league when you see how talented they are throwing the football. But he says a lot of things that we've talked about here on the podcast, but it's really interesting to hear what he thought about it and something that didn't make sense to him as a quarterback to be able to get the play right. And that does seem to be something that Kyle Shanahan, and we've never been on you got to fire Kyle Shanahan, right? Like even after some tough losses, I think fans are going way too far with that. And it's kind of insane, but I understand how they're heated.
We want Brad Johnson. Yeah. Well, what's his name? Not Brad Johnson.
Ben Johnson.
We want Ben Johnson.
Yeah. You'll see a lot.
I wouldn't mind Ben Johnson, by the way, but I'm not saying fire Kyle Shanahan. But for the people that say, well, if you fire him, who would you hire? Ben Johnson. Come on now. You see what this guy's been doing the last couple of years?
You see Bill Belichick's name thrown out there a lot. How different would that be for the 49ers to go from Shanahan to Bill Belichick? But Shanahan's not getting fired. But that doesn't mean there's not some ways he can improve as a coach. And is that one of the ways he can improve the way he looks at his quarterback? And is it maybe up to the quarterback and for Brock to say, hey, look, maybe we should try this. You could put that on my shoulders and I can handle it. Is that all it would take? And so it's quarterback coach relationship. But clearly I think there's something that Kyle can be even better than he already is. And I think he's a really good coach.
I think there's a certain arrogance to him. And all coaches have this, especially all good coaches. You just firmly believe in, whatever your vision is for something. And Kyle clearly has that for his offense, but it's almost arrogant to a fault to where now, like when it's something like this, you think I always go back to this because I remember reading this where Kyle Shanahan and one of his coaches had said, the quarterback doesn't make the offense makes the quarterback. And Kyle truly believes, and I've heard him talk about it with Kirk Cousins, and he's like, well, yeah, I told Kirk Cousins you got the freedom to change it, and Kirk Cousins, he tried to change some things, and he did it for a game, and he's like, oh man, that's too much on my plate or whatever. So it's like, hey, lean on me to put you in position to win and be successful. And I heard Steve Young, and there's another one. Steve Young's like, oh, all the answers, they're built in. All the answers are built into the offense. I would love to play in this offense. And it's like, yeah, until the answer may not be as clear as you want it to be. And the response with Kurt Benkert, he was responding to Ted Nguyen's. He had a clip, and it was the 49ers, Brock Purdy. He's throwing hot, throws his pass to Juwan Jennings. and it's like way short of the sticks, but that's his hot. So it's like, well, you got the blitz on. I got to throw to my hot, even though it's 7 yards shy of the first down marker. Those are the bind that it kind of puts you in. And if you're a team and you know that the defensive coordinators are really good, they're going to dictate certain things. And when you start to dictate, because, if we do this, then he's going to have to throw hot. And if he throws hot, this is where they're going to throw him. We just got to rally down, make the tackle. I promise you that's the conversation they're having in meetings. So if that's what's being said, then Kyle, you got to figure out a way to build in some other answers or let your quarterback find the answer. I get that you feel like the answers are there and he doesn't have to figure it out, but maybe he might have to. And I heard Grant Cohn asking the question. Everybody kind of gave Grant a tough time about, your quarterback and putting more on him because he's a cerebral quarterback and all that. And Kyle gave his kind of a-hole type response to Grant. But in situations like that, our guy Grant, friend of the pod, he's not looking too crazy after all. Yeah, he definitely took his victory laps. He was going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if Kyle disliked the question or the asker more on that one. It might have been a different answer if Mayoko or Barrows asked that question. It's to me, it's just get it right. I don't care what the process is. You're the NFL head coach. Get it right. We had the same exact conversation after the Super Bowl. I don't care what the answer is. Get it right. And you would think that it doesn't have to be put on your quarterback's shoulders every down all game long. But if you know you don't have time to throw past the sticks on a third down, give your quarterback the ability to say, look, they're blitzing right here. Let's pick that up so I have time to make the throw I need to make. And it might only happen a couple times a game, but you got to figure it out. Get it right.
Got to figure it out.
Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate you. You can check out any of the other 200 podcasts here on the network, including the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, myself and Matt Williamson, former NFL scout. We break down the entire league daily here at Locked On. Your team is covered no matter the sport. And, of course, Croc and I will be back tomorrow. Subscribe up right here, Locked On 49ers.